been difficult for City fans watching their side over the past, 5 weeks or so, isn't it? After
Yeah.
14 games without defeat at the start of the season, they've now gone 7 games without a win in all competitions. It's 6 defeats and one draw. They've lost 4 Premier League games in a row, most recently suffering a 2-0 defeat away to title rivals Liverpool. Where do we begin with this one? What are your thoughts after watching City lose again and lose the way they did against a strong and confident Liverpool side?
Just glad it wasn't five, honestly. A 2-0, it sounds surreal saying this out loud, but 8 times out of 10, maybe I would have taken that 2-0 if you offered it beforehand, because where City are right now, they're in a really, really negative space. And yeah, it could have been a humiliation yesterday if Liverpool, if Van Dijk could direct a header, if Salah, threw on goal inexplicably missing. That's so unlike Mo Salah. It wasn't horrific. There were moments of slight reassurance that there is some potential way back from this. And it sounds weird saying that, given Liverpool, could have easily won 3 or 4-0 in that game. But there was some slight moments of comfort in seeing that we did steady the ship in the second half of the first half, and there was some moments in the second half where City did at least progress up the pitch and show a way that City could threaten other sides again. But ultimately, City they were outclassed by a more confident, fitter, um, more aggressive Liverpool side, and I think that's the way that pretty much everyone felt it was going to go. I was sort of holding on to the idea that this game could maybe be the one that gets the players going, and sort of professional pride kicks in and all that kind of stuff. And there was a little bit of that, but City was shell shocked, and after that, the opening 20 minutes where Liverpool could have been 3 or 4 nil up quite easily, and obviously it ended up in the Gakpo goal. It felt like City were never really going to turn around at any point. So it was weird to. It wasn't quite as painful as Feyenoord. It wasn't quite as painful as Spurs. It was just more of the same. And I think only the most optimistic of City fans were looking at this game and expecting this to be the one to turn around this run of form. It still feels like we're having the same discussions where we're just sort of trying to feed our way back into it, get certain players back on the pitch, and see what Pep's got, in terms of potential solutions.
Yeah, I think Pep said that a while now for a few times after games now. He's trying to find this solution, and City
Yeah.
fans are waiting for that. I think from that Liverpool game, this just seemed to look, I think, beaten from the very first whistle almost. It
Yeah.
was very one way traffic for the first half an hour or so, and Guardiola said after the game that Liverpool were unstoppable during that period, and that's of course when they scored their opener. I think it was a poor one to give away. I think
Mhm.
Kanji didn't close Salah down quick enough as he burst down the right, and he didn't really engage with him outside the box, allowed him to come in and put in a great cross. It was a great cross, but I think a preventable one.
Yeah.
Aki probably could have done a bit better as well from a central position to stop it, and then Walker at the back post allowed Gakpo to just run behind him and tap it into the back post. Yeah, it's a hard one, and they could have had a couple of goals like you alluded to then in that sort of first half an hour. Van Dijk
Yeah.
hit the post with a header. Um, Van
Then
Dijk,
you think of the second goal as well, and then even Ruben Diaz. I mean, he has a bit of grace because Ruben Diaz has not played much football
yeah,
recently, but he was culpable for the second, like the penalty. Bernardo Silva with a mistake. Like no one covered themselves in glory. Ortega would probably feel like he was a little bit rash as well. Essentially, we've just listed every single defender making a mistake at some point there.
yeah,
And when that happens, you can only really point to that malaise is sort of a team wide thing. And I think essentially City's problems right now are, twofold: fitness and confidence. Like I think there is an element of quality, but I do feel City are the very best. They might have lost this game anyway with everyone fit because we're not in a great spell right now. Well, maybe with Rodri, that's a different story. But without Rodri and everyone else, we might have lost this anyway. But I do feel, so much of this right now, like, we are better than this, even if I do think City do need to sign some players, and I suspect they actually will start this sort of fabled rebuild a little earlier than they were planning to, and I think City will sign some in January. But I do feel like City, they're not this bad. They're not as bad as they currently are. If everyone's fit, aside from Rodri, City are going to win games. Like if there's a fit and firing, like if all that defensive line was fit and healthier, and then you had Doku, Savinho, De Bruyne, Vardiel a bit more form, Edison, Grealish, people like that, and then maybe Kovacic back, and then Oscar Bob. That's a potential return on the horizon there as well. If all these people are available, City aren't going to lose 6 games out of 7. I really hand on heart believe that. I think there's a very different Manchester City there. I don't think it's a title winning City still because I think there are some fundamental issues in the team. But I did see a team that was trying to work towards something positive. In spells of that game, there really is just a lack of confidence and quality and fitness in this side right now that feels a little bit insurmountable. It's weird to sit here and not have a solution, but I think the only solution really is just time. It's just time, investment, and patience, and probably accepting that for some things that they're going to get worse before they get better. But that is not something that City have had to go through for an awful long time, and everyone has to take the medicine at some point.
Yeah, and that time that City are craving really isn't around the corner. Fixtures continue to come thick and fast, and it's not giving these players the chance to rest. And when players are out, others have got to play through the pain or the lack of fitness that they've got. So it's really hard for City. Sticking with that Liverpool game, were you maybe surprised with Guardiola's team selection at all? Ortega played instead of Edison and Aki at left back ahead of Guardiola. No natural wingers with Nunes and Lewis on the right. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I wasn't really keen on Lewis on the right at all. I understand the rationale behind it, because obviously he does sort of shuttle up and down. He can play on the right. He plays as a right back more often than not. And I understand why you wanted, Gundogan and Bernardo in the middle. Look, it wouldn't be the first time he's gone to Anfield and done something weird. We've seen Gundogan as a winger at one point, many years ago before he turned it around, and we nearly turned the game around. I mean, if Doku, Grealish, and Savino aren't deemed fit enough, then ultimately Guardiola's going to put someone out wide. I was a little bit surprised that he dropped Edison, and he did drop him. There's no sort of way to sort of sugarcoat that any more than what it was. He did have a horrific game against Feyenoord. I think Edison's actually had a pretty decent season. I think his form's dropped over the last few weeks, as is the team's confidence has. But I think at the start, Edison started really well and made some big saves. But he was culpable for some absolute head loss moments against Feyenoord. And I think Guardiola wants to find something different. And look, you look around the team right now, there's not many players you can just sort of pull out the team because everyone's just hasn't got the fitness or sharpness. And I think in the centre, in between the goal is one of the only ways you can actually make a change that won't affect the fitness of the side. And I think he just wanted to try something different there. Ortega is more than capable. I don't know the full reasons. Maybe Edison, maybe he hasn't reacted well in training to that. I don't know. I'm just guessing here. It could be many things, and maybe for Pep was just the time. Maybe Ortega had a phenomenal week in training, and Edison was still making some poor decisions. Maybe it was as simple as that. Maybe I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? But ultimately, Ortega actually made some good saves. To be fair, like obviously for the second goal, he probably shouldn't have rushed out like that. I don't really think that changes with Edison on the pitch. Edison is just as likely to rush out and do something a little bit rash as well, as much as I love him. Vardiel, I understand. Vardiel has had a bit of a stinker recently. I think he's a phenomenal player, but Vardiel, it feels like he's making one or two pretty big mistakes a week. It is down to repetition. It is down to playing far too much. And the problem with confidence is that it takes you both ways. You can take it top of the world, but it can take you down the hole as well. And like right now, Josko Vardiol, he's only young. He's playing an awful lot of football. He's not getting any better because of it. He does need a spell on the sidelines, and that's the beauty of a fully fit squad. Is that if one guy has a pretty poor game, you just rotate him. You bring in Ake or someone like that. You bring someone else in, and they have a week off to sort of reset a little bit mentally, be a little bit fresher and learn from the mistakes. But the problem is when City play every 3 or 4 days, you don't have a chance to sit back and think. You just keep going and going and going, and you play yourself into a hole. I think in general, anyway, even if everyone was fully fit and Vardy was in good form, I probably would have chose Ake against Salah anyway. 'Cause I think Ake's a better one-on-one defender. But other than that, I think the team reasonably picked itself. Rico Lewis and Ake Ortega, the only real surprises there. Nunes back in the team, but I guess if he didn't deem the rest fit enough, then he couldn't really do much more than pick that side.
Yeah, I think Guardiola suggested that the 11 he picked was basically the fittest 11 in his squad. So that was his
Yeah,
excuse,
there
if
we
you
go.
like, for picking that 11. Yeah, maybe a little bit surprised that Guardiola didn't bring De Bruyne on a little bit earlier. I think
Yeah,
yeah,
same.
brought him on. I think just after Salah converted his penalty. So game 2-0, it was pretty much up then and didn't really get the chance to make the impact that City fans would have hoped for. Maybe brought him on, I don't know, 10 minutes earlier. It could have that was maybe a period as well when City had a bit of a decent spell of possession, but just weren't creating anything. So possibly De Bruyne could have been brought on earlier, but
No, I
still,
agree.
yeah, City defeat at the end of the day, and they've now slipped 11 points behind Liverpool at the top of the Premier League table. It's only after 13 games, and there's 25 still remaining. But what are your thoughts now on the title race? Are City out of it after that defeat to Liverpool?
It's not a race anymore. It's hopeful for City. You know, like we're not challenging Liverpool currently. We're just hoping that they mess up. Yeah, like I think we have to be realistic about our expectations. I don't think we can kid anyone. You know, right now I mean, we've got to look at Brighton and Forest right now and Chelsea more than Liverpool because they are miles in front of Manchester City. It's always possible while it's possible. But this isn't City, you know, like in previous years, City have had this poor run of form, but they've still won half of the games that they played and drawn a couple and lost one. So say we had a poor run of form of 8 games, City probably win 4 of them, lose 2 and draw 2, which is very different to where City currently at right now. So it's not comparable. You know, like this is just genuinely unprecedented. So, and I think there are real structural issues that even returning players aren't going to solve. There are clearly age issues. There's clearly fitness issues, and I do worry if there's just slight hunger issues. I don't think these players for 1 second don't care. They absolutely do, but you could not care as much just by default as you do several years later than you did at the start of your Manchester City tenure. It's just not possible unless you're sort of freakishly motivated, and that's very hard to keep going again and again and again and again when you're in your 30s and you know you're aware that your time is coming to an end naturally anyway. And that 1% drop in hunger, it really can make such a massive difference. And it's not hunger because they don't want it. It's hunger. I think it's because to turn this around, it's going to require like a Herculean effort, and to find that energy, you have to really dig deep. And I just don't know how much these players can keep doing that because I think they've been digging and digging and digging. I think now they're just hitting, you know, they're hitting the foundations, and there's nothing left to keep. There's nothing left in the tank basically, and I worry if that's just the natural cycle of things, and I don't want to dig out these players. Too many digging analogies here, but I don't want to keep pointing the fingers at the players because I don't know if it's fair. I think some of these players they've done everything you could possibly ask for them. They've broken records. They've won time and time again. They've done things that I didn't think were possible. You know, in a City shirt. So can I really ask them at 34 years old, at 31 years old, having played 70 games a season, in the case of Bernardo Silva, I know he's got a young family and I know he wants to go home and be in the sunnier climates, can I really ask for him to bleed on the pitch again? Like, I'm sure he wants to, but I don't know in the back of his head, as human nature is thinking, I could be in Portugal right now near my family and I could have a better night's sleep because the grandparents look after my little daughter, you know, like it's when you start thinking about it as humans, I understand why it's hard to have the edge essentially because money, success, and time just dulls it a little bit. So I think these are the main problems that City have got, and this is why I worry. Even with returning players, I don't know if we can go again to the same extent. I don't know if we can hunt down a Liverpool side that is right now confident and happy, and they are flying because they probably sense that City are feeling this way, and they have that hunger because they've got young players in that side, and because they've not won it for such a long time, because they've got a new manager. It's just naturally going to be a little bit more positive for them. So this is where I'm at. I don't think it's a title race. Football can change quickly because players can, win a few games and they can sense, they can smell blood or whatever, and maybe you can find a way back into it. But I think for me as a City fan, I'm sat back thinking where we are right now is just it was inevitable at some point. Maybe it could have been managed slightly better in terms of the transition between eras and all that kind of stuff. But there's no side in the world that is immune to this, and I feel like it's not a race now. It's more just get the top 4, you see where we are in March, and maybe you might only be 5, 8 points by then. It might be. If it is at that point, then maybe we can talk. But right now, I can't really sit here and pretend that we're in it while these problems are like we need to sort our own house out first before we start looking at the rest of the league because this is such a big issue. And yeah, it feels too much to ask of these players again. I don't know if they can do it again.
Yeah, I think, obviously a lot's been said about the injuries and the fitness issues, but I think now it's come to a point where it's just as much a mental thing as it is a physical
Yeah,
thing now for
I
these
agree.
players. And to just, yeah, like you said, just to go again after so many years of relentless pushing for the title and winning and winning and winning, it's just hard to go again. And this seems to be now the year where it could be the year where they get, hand over the title. And yeah, it's going to be really hard to, even though there's 25 games to go, it's going to be hard to close that 11-point gap. I think if there's any hope, Arsenal have had that blip, I think, and they seem to be coming back into it. They could have another, but Liverpool are yet to have their blip, if you like, whereas City and Arsenal, a few others have. So are they really going to go the entire season without some form of blip in the
No.
season? It's hard. I don't know. You could think it happens at some point, and then it gives City some hope, and you'd hope then for City that that would coincide when City are back on track and they're in a good run of form, and that's maybe when they can close the gap. But yeah, as things stand, it's hard to
Yeah.
see, isn't it?
Well, I can't see Liverpool dropping more than 15 points throughout the entirety of the
Yeah,
rest of the season, and that
yeah,
requires that's a lot of points as well. That's five losses there, you know. I don't see it. I can see maybe them dropping. Say, look, I can see them losing 3 or 4 games throughout the rest of the season, drawing a few. That would have to be perfect then to turn that around, and that's a big ask because Liverpool right now are confident. They're going to drop points at some point. Look, honestly, I didn't expect us to win 5 in a row this year. I really didn't. And this is not sort of self-preservation. I just don't think City need to win 5 in a row. And that sounds really silly, but no team needs to win 5 in a row. I think City really need to just sort of. We've got 2 years more of Guardiola after the season, and there could be an argument to be said that I think City have got. Last season, I don't think City played the best football in the league, and yet we won the title. It was a weird season last year where I do honestly believe the brilliance of Guardiola and the drive of some of these players got us through more than the quality of City's football. And I think that was a title built on experience last year, like the know-how, the presence of mind, and been there, done that. Where Arsenal just fell a little bit short. It's funny though because experience very quickly turns into tiredness, and that's it. Like can only get you so far. Like that experience usually, essentially, it means age, you know, and that at some point is going to run out, and I think that's what's happened now. You could make an argument to say that this could be a real good thing for City in the end. Like if City's experience was dragging them through it still, you might be tempted to go again and again and again, pushing these players. But I think at some point they're going to. The car's just going to break down and need an MOT, and that's where we're at right now. And I think this the car was rattling already. So I do feel like this could actually be a reasonably good thing. It could force City to take in collaboration with Hugo Viana coming in as well, which is worth pointing out. So we're going to have a new director of football anyway, who's going to want to change things a little bit, and there's going to be money in the bank. So the combination of the squad clearly needing changes with the new director of football and the players that are underperforming are the older ones to an extent. I think it all. And given how dramatic it is, I think it all forces City to refocus a little bit. So I actually weirdly think it could be a good thing for City. This season's going to be tough, but I want the next 2 years of Guardiola to be well spent. And this could be a good way to make sure that City are in a really good position when he does sort of hang up his tactics board in a couple of years, because I presume young players will come in. I presume there'll be in that 2 years 5 or 6 new names, and you would hope they are of sufficient quality because 2 more years of high quality coaching from them and City could be in a very good place. And it sounds wild that I'm looking that far ahead right now, but I think that's what we have to do as City fans.